holdings. Gentlemen, we continue this discussion. Of course, you're expressing your frustrations before we took our short break. Let's hear from Ibrahim so far in regard to what Honorable Nderitu is saying. What will be your reaction?
Thank you, Debarl. I feel very strongly that as a panel, we need to state some facts.
Yes.
And I want to underscore that much as we made a lot of progress in land reforms in this country, we got a policy, we anchored it in the Constitution. Now we have 5 sets of land laws. We are now doing regulations of that land laws. Mm-hmm. Nothing about the constitutionally protected sanctity of title and security of tenure can happen if the institutions within this country do not work. You see, these are frameworks, and frameworks are operated by institutions. So in the absence of vigilance from those institutions, what we can have is things stated on law, but things that do not happen in practice. So I would want to raise the attention of the national and county governments to the fact that they have a role to play with this kind of thing that's happening in Laikipia and what we are talking about in the coast. Yes. Irrespective of politics, the fact that we're going into politics, if we allow ourselves to lull just because we are getting into national politics, this will become cyclic. So one, the Commission, and let's not have apologies from the Commission and the Ministry of Lands. Yes. They are the 2 key institutions of government that ought to raise the red flag when there are things like this. Then the national government also ought to rise up to its occasion, the security arms of this country. Otherwise, you can't give me all the titles, the beautiful lists that you can give me, but in the absence of enforcement and vigilance by the Commission and the Ministry of Land that things are going wrong. Right now, I have not had the voice of the ministry, nor that of the Commission about those illegalities that are happening in Laikipia, because that's infringement of people's private land rights. Yes. So, yes, we have laws, yes, we have constitution, but let's have institutions also working. Otherwise, we are paying them and simply getting a raw deal. That's my observation on this.
Right, so we're getting a raw deal, Akoth?
Yes, and I want to make 2 points as well, just to that. First of all, the role of government is not only to protect life and property, but also to protect human dignity. And that's the really watershed of the new constitution, where human rights and dignity has been used many times. And secondly, what we are seeing is an indicator that the so-called land reforms are not in the right trajectory. If you look back to the national land policy, it spoke about what they call special issues that needed particular and deliberate attention. One of them was the pastoralist issue. The other one was the issue of land redistribution. The other one was the issue of all historical land injustice questions. Yes. So far, what the Ministry of Land calls land reforms have not dealt with those issues. And because of that, we are seeing flare-ups. So the thing to do, in my opinion, is not merely to condemn the actors, be them pastoralists or other actors, but is to go back and engage land reforms in a way that was envisaged before in the national land policy and in the Constitution. We would like to see a situation where, for example, the instruments of dealing with historical land injustice are being put into place. We would like to see the issue of land ceiling in terms of maximum hold and minimum hold being discussed openly, and formulas being proposed and laws being enacted. Take, for example, Egypt, for many, many years along the line, experienced the kind of conflicts that we are seeing in Kenya today. At that time, the argument was that the problem with Egypt was that we had a small strip of fertile area with a huge population. And so the agenda was reduce population for it to solve the problem. But with time, it became apparent that, look, the problem with Egypt was land distribution. Now, there was a large number of people who had such a small parcel of land in terms of access, use, and management. A small number of people with a large parcel, and a large number of people with so little. So the problem with Egypt ultimately was not a demographic problem. Of course, demography is a factor, but ultimately it's an issue of distribution. And
but 2 wrongs,
two wrongs,
it's not about or even wrongs. 3 wrongs don't make a right.
Let him finish. Just a moment. Let him finish.
It's not about 2 wrongs. It's about what is the fundamental infrastructural question. The fundamental infrastructural question is, are people feeling included enough?
But surely we cannot argue because there was injustice in the past.
Just a moment.
That you should visit injustice on me now. That cannot be a solid legal argument. Look, has Kenya had problems in the past? Yes. But that gives you no excuse whatsoever to go to Ngarua, invade Kamau in his 3-acre plot. It cannot be justified under any circumstance.
All right.
In any case, Debarl, please let me finish this point.
But we tend to forget.
In any case,
yes,
there was a security operation there 2 months ago. Yeah?
yes.
In Laikipia. The security operation was suddenly suspended when Samburu political leadership went to complain to senior government. Yeah? All the security officers transferred, the senior ones. What is that about if government is not being complicit? So I cannot accept what my colleague is saying, that because there was injustices 50 years ago or 100 years ago, that therefore you should go and punish peasants in Laikipia. It cannot be acceptable.
Let's say from George Wachiuri, from the private sector, in this regard, because also there has been a debate on whether the National Lands Commission should actually be delving deeper to matters of private land. That has been a bone of contention, isn't it? Right away. And of course now with this particular amendment, it has been clarified that yes, you can actually delve there. Isn't that the case so far? But let's hear from George Wachiuri before we hear from Khalif.
I think it's a matter of coordination between the Ministry of Lands, Housing and Urban Development and the National Lands Commission. We as private sector had sessions with both teams, and I'm happy that so far there have been a bit of a collaboration, but they can be able to do more. And I'm happy that both parties, they are able to listen to private sector. And even as we jump up and down, of course, there are some progress that as private sector you have seen today. When we are paying the duty transaction, we no longer go to queue. We are doing it online, which is very good. And but they can be able to do better on registration and also ensuring that the double titles or 3 titles doesn't happen. So since we enacted our constitution in the year 2010, we are now doing this now 2017. So this is like a baby that is growing. So such discussions will keep enabling the institutions to work and have some teeth to bite, and also resources, because one of the challenges they have is like a National Health Commission is lack of resources. And going forward, they need to lobby for those resources, and also, as Mheshimiwa said, they work together to ensure that we in private sector, we feel secure for us to go out there in the bank, borrow 300 million and invest. And that's the way to go, because as a people, we need that confidence.
All right, but when we talk about sanctity also of a title deed, I want you to give us your experience, just briefly, on how you lost a colossal sum of money because of the shenanigans within the Ministry of Lands as well, because you actually bore the brunt of, you know, the dysfunctions of these particular institutions that we have in this country.
Those are the challenges we're talking about, because for us, we went there and did the search, it was good, only to realize that the title was not genuine, and we had already made our payments, and we literally lost all the money. It was over 5 million. And we are hoping that going forward, these things need to reduce. They are still there yet, but we are hoping that the ministry and the National Arts Commission...
So you lost money?
Yes.
Yeah. How did you lose that money?
It's a long story.
Yeah, you can summarize it for us, for the benefits of Kenyans,
yes,
of course, so that we can actually bring this sort of malaise that we have, so to speak, within the land
It was
sectors.
within the last transaction process. We went out there, the title was there, we did the search, it was good. We never knew that Kenyans can organize for searches. And only to realize later after we paid the deposit that actually the title was not genuine. And it was not easy to find the people who sold to us. Up to today, we have never found them. And we lost the money that put us down for almost 1 year. So it was a very, very serious, you know, we were under depression for losing such huge amount of money, especially when you're starting your business. Yes.
All right. Khalif, you want to respond?
Yes, I want to jump in here. First of all, in the case of Samburu and other places like in the coast and other parts of Rift Valley, this is not a dispute of ownership between 2 parties. It is just a case of a breakdown of law and order, a breakdown of hooliganism, which should not be encouraged. Whether this is an election year or not should not matter. We as government must come out very clearly on this matter. When it comes to the question of fake titles, I want to say something a little bit about this question of fake titles and the searches that produced positive results. This is not an isolated incident again. This is not an isolated case. This is rampant.
Yes.
We have cases where one piece of land can be registered in the names of several people. with different numbers, with different files, each one of them able to actually carry out a search and get a positive result from the same institution. Fake titles are no longer prepared, as people say, in River Road. They are not done in River Road. They are done right there in RT House.
Right.
This is where it is going. Because that's where the search is. How did the records get into the registrar's register if it was done outside the building? So we have to be very sincere about this. The commission and the ministry working together, they must. That's what the law requires them to do. And each one has a role to play in this. But are they working together? They are not. I can say right now, publicly on national television, that they are not. And because they were unable to work together, and because they had to resolve this in-house thing that Mr. Ambani is talking about, in-house, several years of meetings have not produced that. So we ended up in the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court addressed itself to that issue and actually gave out a ruling on who should do what and whose function it is to do what. But has that been implemented? No. And this is now a case of breakdown of law and order again in an office setting in a boardroom, not even out there in the field with herders and pastoralists, right here in boardrooms. It is not happening. The two institutions are not working together because one institution that has failed this country for more than 100 years is still clinging into the things that they have done, and we have seen land fraud now more than any other time in the history of this country.
Good you say that, but why is it the clinging that we are seeing over time and so many years, right? Is it because deliberately there is this clinging and there is this dysfunctional that is happening there so that people may benefit from this within the system? So who are really gaming the system?
It is because of the rampant corruption that has hit the land sector and that has been there for a very long time, that is making the transfer of functions, whether to the counties or to the independent institutions like the Legislative Land Commission, not happening. The ministry will not let it go, and whatever the law says, they do not care.
All right, let's hear from
Debarl, I'm very disturbed as we do this debate.
Yes.
Because you see, if you talk to the ordinary Kenyan out there in the street, they do not know the difference between the National Land Commission and the Ministry of Lands. They understand these as instruments of the state. So if we can't sit here and one of those organs says they are not working well for the Kenyan out there, I think then what you are telling the country is that we need to go back to the drawing board. It is now going to the 4th year from the time we put into office a National Land Commission. We've constantly urged them and the ministry to understand that they are working for one common consumer, the citizen out there.
So what do you do if it doesn't happen?
Look, what I'm saying...
Do we lie to Kenyans that we are working together when we actually not?
Can I finish my point? What I'm saying is that it is time we asked other questions. If you cannot work together for the country, we will have to reapproach this matter. Otherwise, then we are giving the ordinary Kenyan a road deal. Transactions cannot go well. Now, they are supposed to
blame on this.
Just a moment.
They are supposed to be fighting to perfect the system for us. And what we now hear, I didn't know because I thought after we amended the law
sure you did.
And the constitution, I thought they were working, two hands working well together. If they are not, it looks like they will not, and therefore there is a fundamental question to be answered.
Okay, and again, we have a task force that we saw. There was a task force just last year that was set up by Honorable Jacob Kaimenyi because of an internal memo, right? You remember the internal memo that you were talking about. And then now we have this particular task force that has been formed. We don't know what really happened with the previous task force. I know you're privy to this.
I'll tell you what happened to the previous task force.
Yes, what
There was a task force that has set up even long before the commission came for the purpose of preparing regulations to implement the laws that were enabling the constitution. And they produced the results. They delivered at the cost of exorbitant amount of money on the taxpayer. They produced it and gave it as to Parliament to pass. They pushed it over. And the gentlemen out here on this panel are aware of that. It never saw the light of day. Whether it is the executive that is stopping it or it is Parliament that refused to pass it, that one is a debate for another day. So now they had to wait until the laws were amended so that they can have another task force to input the few parts that have been amended.
Okay.
This is the one that is being set up now.
All right, let's hear also from Stephen Ambani, because first of all, you want to also weigh in before we go to the issue of also compensation, especially when we come to SGR and all these projects as well. This also has been a very contentious issue, you say, because there seem to be a deliberate attempt, especially from the private sector and the government, on how they can actually also inflate you know, the prices of the properties that SGR and, you know, maybe where also we have roads that should pass through, they're being inflated, and this also is making or scuttling the whole process and delaying the projects from being finished. Is that the case? That has been your argument.
Yeah. That has been our argument. But let me first talk about the issue of fake titles.
Thank you.
This country should take this matter very serious. The way we are tackling drugs issue in Coast Province as a national interest, the way we are talking about registration of people to vote, and everybody is now busy about that, this is the way we should take this issue of fake titles serious. Because this is a security issue. It's even more dangerous than the terrorists that come from outside. But what are we saying? Since the Orengo time, they have talked of digitization. How do you digitize documents that you also always tell us that you are not sure of them? Yeah? Our position has been, before we go to digitization of records and lands, why can't we confirm and reconfirm the rights of Kenyans who own land? Let's start there. Let us then digitize the survey records. Let us digitize the other records, like part development plans, that come in before the title. So once we are sure that Debarl owns this property, is the one on the ground, let us come in and digitize. It has happened elsewhere in this world, in the developed world, and people are sure of the sanctity of title. In Netherlands, for example, you can do a search online. You can even do it from Kenya. Yeah? If, for example, now we know there is only if the logbooks are working. Yeah? KRA, now you cannot transfer property without paying stamp duty and capital gains tax.
Yes.
What is it that is impossible with our titles? It means there could be, maybe there is no goodwill from where it should come from. And these are issues we should discuss openly. Then the issue of public land.
Yes.
Let me inform this country that public land is not safe in this country. Mheshimiwa is saying what is happening in Laikipia. Let me tell you that a time bomb, even just near here, Portland land, people are going to that land, taking possession, calling themselves squatters, putting up houses, big houses, permanent houses in daylight. You cannot say that the government is not seeing, that the police are not seeing. This is happening all over. Go to Lamu, it is the same thing. Yeah? So we are saying that the issue of title to land, we must address. As we talk about digitization, let us do it in the right manner so that our country is safe, so that local and international investors can feel that indeed we can invest in Kenya. Thank you.
And that is why we seek from the Commission and from the Ministry. You see, these injustices, this disregard for people's rights are happening right now. And whereas we may have historical issues to deal with, we cannot sit by while more injustices are happening. So what we expected from the Commission is for the Commission to pronounce itself very, very clearly on the question of Laikipia and other places, not just Laikipia, but certainly I am from Laikipia. So we expected the Commission to stand out and address the issue squarely and be able to state the facts for what they are. As we seek to address the longer standing questions that our colleague from Pamoja Trust is raising, so that we don't compound problems with more problems. And I don't believe that the Commission is powerless. The Commission is an independent constitutional body that, and even if all it had is voice to say that this is wrong, I think the Commission should exercise that voice. But I don't believe that the Commission is powerless.
The Commission is not powerless. The power has been given by the Constitution. It's true. The question of Samburu, Mheshimiwa, if I have to say this again one more time, Debarl.
Yes.
This is not a question of dispute of land between one group and another. The ownership of that land is not in.
It's clear.
It's clear. There's no question about that. What is happening is invasion, illegal encroachment on somebody's private property.
Exactly.
And since it is not a question of who owns that land, then it doesn't become the problem of the Commission, because we know who the owners are. Everybody knows who the owners are. Even the invaders know who the owners are. It is a question of law and order, and that belongs to another institution, not the National Land Commission.
The reason, I'm sorry, but the reason why the commission needs to step in is like this. Yes, those invading the land know who the owners are. However, as you put the potency of politics in it, people saying, oh, these leases are going to expire, therefore, occupy the land, so that therefore, and so on. So the commission needs to be able to come out clearly and say, even if, like you've tried to do restitution for the family in Westlands, that the commission needs to come out very, very clearly and say, hey, you politicians, you can shout to high heaven, but the ranchers, but the subsistent farmers who have titles, when the time comes to renew these leases, we will renew them. And it doesn't matter whether you come there forcefully. Now that would remove the opportunity, false opportunity that is being created. The second thing is this, Commissioner. Yes, it is law enforcement, but the institutions that serve Kenyans, the institutions of the Constitution, work together. Now, I think the Commission has a role to stand up and say, you law enforcement, you are not doing your work, because you are supposed to help uphold the sanctity of the title.
Fantastic. And if we are not upholding the sanctity of the titles, looking at what we have also, and I want to just warn our viewers, the pictures might be a bit graphic, but it's important for you to see what is really happening in Laikipia, especially with that buffalo. This is now the national, the conservancy. This is just a bit of it, right? This is what now the herders are doing. They're killing wildlife. I will show you another picture, very, very moving picture of a giraffe that was pregnant, and also, it was just ripped off. I mean, they're doing the rounds in the social media as well. But looking at that, this herders went to the ranch. And this was actually the conservancy, the National Park Conservancy, and they killed the buffalo because they want to take over for their cattle to get pasture. This is at the expense of our wildlife, threatening also our ecosystem, threatening our tourism sector as well. If you're not responding to this and you've not reacted to this, then where do Kenyans stand to?
You see, the question of why the herders have to move into the ranches during the drought in search of pasture is not excusable at all. We as a country must address ourselves to the proper management of our land resources. And community land should be managed properly, and I think this is what the new community land bill is trying to do. If the ranchers, and with the assistance of government, it is government's responsibility to get into the community lands and to develop it for sustainable occupation, so that it doesn't become necessary for them to cross over into other private lands.
I want just to show our viewers also, this is a picture I'm talking about. It's very graphic, I'm sorry, but this was a very, a pregnant giraffe there, and we had also the features just being ripped off from the giraffe. So if the pictures cannot shock us, then what will shock us?
And you see, this is why we are asking of the Commission. Law enforcement is weak. And as I said here, and I want to repeat it again, the national executive, in my view, has been complicit. Because when there was a security operation to try and deal with this 2-3 months ago, yes, the security operation was suddenly halted. The senior officers in Laikipia were all moved, the county commissioner, the county commander of police, they were all moved. And it appears like that was setting the stage for an expanded invasion of these lands. But if law enforcement is failing us, why should institutions that have constitutional guarantee, that have constitutional protection, keep quiet? They should be out there with us saying this is wrong and it must be stopped, and taking the national executive to account.
Let's say from Akoth, first of all, Stephen raises a very important point, that our public land is no longer safe. And I think the ministry had also raised what they call a rapid response from the Ministry of Lands. If I may just get back to that, I will get it in a moment, then I will read it to you and tell us what is really happening, because we were not sure also on how the public land, especially school grounds, are safe anymore. We know what's really happened in Langata Road as well. So you are also embarking on a very intensive, a very intense program right now to make sure that school lands are not grabbed as well. But let's hear from Akoth before we come to
I think first of all, maybe we may want to settle this matter of Laikipia for the purpose of debate and proceed to other matters. But I want to say that lawlessness, anarchy cannot be tolerated. That is true. The National Land Commission and Ministry of Land should not be mute. I think they must pronounce themselves on this matter. But I think that what we are seeing is an indicator. We must use it as an indication of an underlying problem, which is that the government of the day is not committed to comprehensive land reforms. That is why the National Land Commission is being muzzled. That is why the Ministry of Land is not applying itself. Then on the question of public land, which I think is very important, I want to take us back to 3rd of February 2013, when President Uhuru Kenyatta, at that time as a candidate of Jubilee, outlined the agenda of Jubilee government on land reforms. One of the areas he cited was Kibera, which is public land. And he said that Kibera is public land that is prime, that is worth, he quoted it about 60 billion, that it is not it's not realizing its potential because it's not regularized, it's not demarcated. 4 years down the line, what has happened to Kibera? Has there been any progress? And it's not just Kibera. If you look at Nairobi alone, about 60% of informal settlements are on public land in Nairobi. And this they occupy without title, this they occupy without basic infrastructure, this they occupy without any regularization. And there's been no efforts from the ministry to deal with this, and most importantly, from the National Land Commission, which has a mandate to deal with the public land question. So while I agree with the initiative at the moment to deal with the school land, this is a very small portion, and it's not the portion that deals with the fundamental problem, because in fact, dealing with the school land, church land is the easiest thing. Right. But dealing with the people settlement, where people live in indignity, is a bigger thing. So, and if I may just add another bit there, is that because of that inner rot, that's why compensation is becoming a big issue. Why? Because people within the ministry, perhaps National Land Commission and other government institutions, get to know in advance where particular infrastructures will be passing.
All right.
Then they go and acquire land and then go and inflate prices and they get money. So we have to be able to move, Debarl, the question of land from being a mere private property question to a public commodity, cohesion, citizenship question, which requires a more intense intervention. Right. Allow me to give you one small example. In South Africa, if you allow me, the big landowners went to court and they preferred charges against government, saying if government does not resettle the squatters, their own titles were being put at risk. And they told government, please resettle the squatters for our titles to have meaning, for titles to be protected. We are not seeing that kind of thinking in this country. We are seeing a thinking where it's about private ownership for a few individuals, not intervention on public land where the majority of the urban poor and rural squatters live.
All right. We want to see the complicity of also institutions in this malaise that we in. First of all, looking at yesterday's Daily Nation, there was a story about a farmer or farmers who had taken an MP to court of alleged grabbing of 3 billion shillings land. And it read in an application filed as urgent at Thika Environment and Land Courts, Togoto Ukai Self-Help Group accused Mr. Gashoki of colluding with the Director of Surveys, Chief Land Registrar and National Lands Commission through his survey company, GeoEca Survey, to grab the land. Of course, that number was given LR number 2256/8. The group says the land in question was set aside for allocation to its member by the colonial government, but due to the emergency declaration during the Mau Mau insurgency, no title deed or allocation was done. Since then, members settled on selected portions of the land, carrying out subsistence activities on it, right? You can see also surveyors are in this. You can tell us how surveyors are in this, because they're working in cahoots with also officials from the National Lands Commission as well, right? So the rot is not even with the citizenry, the rot is within the system.
I agree. I couldn't agree with you more. First, let's address ourselves to the question, to the issue my colleague here, my left, brought up about public land not being safe. even private land is not safe. Even community land is not safe from grabbing. When I say that, some people kind of get worried that I am making statements that might cause unnecessary panic in this country. But I think we must speak the truth and address the issues as they are. Unless we do that, then we become irrelevant in the places that we occupy. The Minister of Land is not represented in this panel, unfortunately. They probably should have been here to answer some of those questions.
Yeah, I tried reaching out to them, but you know now
other institutions, even in the private sector, the licensed surveyors, for example, 3 of us on this panel, fortunately, are licensed surveyors. Ibrahim Mwathane is, I am a licensed surveyor, and so is Mr. Ambani, licensed surveyor. We have a responsibility also, and I think we have failed this country in certain ways. There would never have been a land problem, and reforms would not have been necessary if surveyors did their job properly and if lawyers did their job properly. Let's say this very openly and very frankly.
Yes.
We are not doing what we are supposed to do. We are letting down this country. And I think when I speak for surveyors, let me say right now, Debarl, that since Kenya became a country, even a colonial entity, way back in 1895,
yes,
only 230 surveyors have been licensed.
Yes.
My number was 192, which means I am the 192nd surveyor that has been registered in this country. I think Mr. Mwathane came a little bit earlier than me, and maybe Mwathane came later than me. I'm somewhere in between.
Yes.
This is unacceptable. How can only, out of the 230 that have been registered, half of them are not alive anymore? The other half are retired. This half of the whatever is left are in the public service, including the 2 of us here. So we are out of action. So Mr. Mwathane and his team, I think they're about 70 all over the country. They cannot serve. And I don't know why this is happening. And I think we should address ourselves to this. What that does is encourages quacks to profilate. I mean, they will be all over. They will be doing all the things that professional surveyors are supposed to be doing. And then there are quack lawyers who will be working with those quack surveyors to do all these irregular things. But as institutions, both in the National Land Commission and the ministry, I say again, we are not working together the way we should be. Because each one of us has a role to play. The Constitution and enabling legislation has assigned roles to each one of us. We are not doing what we are supposed to do because one of us is stopping the other one from doing it.
All right. Okay, even as we're trying also to be wrapping up, we want to see especially what is happening with compensation. And I think the Institute of Surveyors had raised this question of compensation because it seems there's complicity also between private sector and the government. And as I had asked you earlier, inflating all the prices, and that's also scuttling the whole process. And the citizenry also are not benefiting from SGR. There's delays because of all these shenanigans who are coming in between. Could you clarify for us what has been your frustration?
Okay. Debarl, before I talk about that, the issue of who is involved in the issue of land grabbing.
Yes.
Our take is we are all to blame. And when you talk about land grabbing, you cannot call someone a grabber unless he has a document, a title document.
Yes.
And the title document comes only from the government. So somebody does not become a grabber just by occupying land. One becomes a grabber by getting title to land. So our take is, why can't we deny these people these titles to this land that does not belong to them but belongs to the public? So as we say that, there is another aspect that I wouldn't want us to forget. That one of the mandates of the National Land Commission is to keep an inventory of all public land in this country. Yes, we are aware they do not have the money. So we ask the government to give them money because this is very important. And we also asking the National Land Commission, when you are dealing with politicians, you should know how to deal with them, how to reach out to them so that they give you money for you to deliver on your mandates. Now, the issue of compensation. In this case, I said land is a security issue. Our documents should just be guarded as well as armories are guarded in this country. Why am I saying this? When it comes to compensation, when the government is working on plans for infrastructural projects, how does this information become public? It becomes public because we do not take care of our land information. We do not treasure this information, yet it costs us a lot. So the agencies, the government agencies involved, should know they are dealing with important information. Keep it confidential until it is important that it gets out there to the public.
Right.
Thank you.
All right. Maybe also we can start by giving also a closing statement. Let's hear from George Wachiuri and also Ibrahim Mwathane. The multi-stakeholders rapid response survey initiative that was also rolled out by the government, the Ministry of Lands. If I may ask you, Mwathane, do you think it will bring any discernible difference? They were actually to go out and see the public lands that has been allocated to schools and they get title deed. Isn't that so, Khalif? Yeah? So do you think it will bring any discernible difference, especially with the public schools? They say that is just a sliver of the whole sector, so maybe we may not just feel the whole effect. What do you think?
No, my take is that I think there's been laxity in the past in safeguarding public land, particularly schools. And therefore, any efforts made, whether now or tomorrow, to ensure that school land is safe, in my view, is appreciable, and I think we should be commending the effort by both the Commission and the Ministry. And I really think that the Commission has a role, if they could try and converge to one areas where they speak together. Because if you look at what they've done on public land,
yes,
this is appreciable progress, and the last, I think, declaration was from the Ministry that they have waived both process and transactional fees for institutions, schools, when it comes to obtaining title. So that should be deepened. And I also want to indicate that what Dr. Ouma has mentioned in terms of public land on which there are squatters, there are people who have no titles within the urban areas, is a major issue in this country. If you look at Nairobi, Thika, Nakuru, Mombasa, Kisumu, it's really a big issue. So I think as much as we are trying to safeguard the schools, the mass of people which is sitting on our public land in urban areas needs to be given thought within a very structured system, very structured approach. And I think as I wind up, I would also want to agree that there's a challenge with the enforcement of particularly professional practitioners and how they apply themselves in public space. So I think there's a challenge for us as institutions, the Institution of Surveyors, Law Society of Kenya, and more particularly the regulatory board. You know, the Land Surveyors Board has a very big role. The Kenya Institute of Planners has a board, because without they applying it, so again, it comes back to what the police is not doing when it comes to infringement of land rights. If they're not applying themselves when I break the practice law, then obviously there is a vacuum that gets exploited. So I think, Chair, there's a role for you to work with the board and Law Society of Kenya to also ensure that they police the space that practitioners are operating within.
All right, let us hear from George Wachiuri as well as we're winding up. What will be your thought, especially with the threat of the multinationals? I don't know if that has been settled as well, where we know the leases were being contentious. You'll clarify that, but just give us from the private sector, what would be your desire, especially in light of what we've seen now? There's a new task force with the Ministry of Lands that has been set up to try and bring sanity in the sector again.
I think for us in the private sector, we need more working together for these institutions to offer solutions, because at the end of the day, we fund them. We are paying huge taxes to support them. So they must work together. They go lock themselves in the boardroom and they work together and instill confidence on investments, because Kenya is not an island. We are attracting people from across the globe. So people need to be sure that the title deeds that they are getting, the leases, if it is 99 years, it's there. And because causing that panic, we are going to lose jobs, the government is going to lose income, and it is not good for this nation. So all these people, you have a responsibility to participate. And let's not pass the buck. Let us do what we can. If it is National Arts Commission, engage with the private sector. And I'm happy that they give us chances to talk to them. And we need to keep pushing, not to give up. This is not time to give up, because we have a nation to build. We have a people to create jobs for private sector. But maybe advice to the ministry and the National Arts Commission. As the Mheshimiwa said, let us talk about this community lands bill. Let them educate people. Let them talk about eviction and resettlement bill. Let's talk about what does it mean to own land. Because some of our people that we deal with, they don't know. Today we are talking about women rights on land ownership. Sometimes you go to buy properties, but a gentleman has got 4 wives. they are not aware that they can participate in making a decision that they can be able to authorize the sale of property. So we have a duty to do.
All right.
Because for me, there is light at the end of the tunnel.
All right, we have 2 minutes to go now. I give each of you 30 seconds to just give us your winding thoughts. And I know this is a discussion that we need to hold on again and again and again so that we can get sanity and get also what is the progress results from the ministry as well. Let's hear from you, Stephen.
Okay. Let me just remind Kenya
30 seconds, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
After we fought in 2007, 2008, land reforms was part of Agenda 4, and we should not lose track of this, and that we all have a duty to talk against what is happening in Laikipia. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we cannot make any progress until every institution sticks to its mandate. The law is followed, the constitution is respected. But one thing that I don't want this panel not to discuss today is the creation of the National Land Information Management System. That is the thing that's going to save us. That is the thing, the thing that's going to help private sector so that they don't lose money. Because if it worked, then we would not be having the kind of situation that we have. That will be what will be protecting public and community lands too. We must have that. All our neighbors have it. We help them create it, but we are refusing to do it ourselves.
That is done. Ibrahim?
We've spent a lot of money as a country trying to get legal frameworks to safeguard our operations on land. Let us not resort to violence. Everywhere in this country, let us resort to the laws that we've created, and let the enforcement arms also apply themselves on this matter.
Thank you. Let's hear from also Honorable Nderitu Muriithi.
Well, the National Land Commission needs to come out and address Kenyans very, very clearly on the question of Laikipia and set the record straight, so that those who are using ignorance to fund violence in Laikipia can be stopped. And that can only happen, Commissioner, if your commission comes out very clearly so that it is all there for everybody to hear and to see.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mine basically is to say the lawlessness that we are seeing in places like Laikipia is because the national government is not known to be respecting laws more lately. We've seen the courts nullify a lot of decisions made by the national land, by the Ministry of Land and the executive. And I think we would like to suggest that the executive should embrace this culture of law and order by respecting court decisions, respect procedures, and most important, we must remember the role of government is to protect law, property, and human dignity. Thank you.
Thank you very much.